Hello Jensen, Jaguars, Miss McLean here, and happy Friday, November 20th. So as we prepare to take a week off from school next week to celebrate Thanksgiving, what are some things that come to mind when you think about how that first Thanksgiving was celebrated in 1621? The stories we have likely learned about Thanksgiving are told from the European settlers' point of view. Our American history has, for the most part, been written by the people who ruled and conquered the land, and that generally has been the European explorers and settlers. So the Thanksgiving story we know is more a story or a tale rather than an actual factual account. So what are some real facts about how Thanksgiving came to be? We're going to need to go to the east coast of the United States in what are now the states of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We know that the Pilgrims arrived in North America in what is Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. When they arrived, they had little skills to survive in their new environment. So they began to search for food in the area and found an abandoned Indian village and took whatever they could find. But why was the village empty? Well, a few years earlier, European explorers had landed in the same area and they brought with them sickness and illness, a plague, and that killed tens of thousands of Native Americans, about 2/3 of the population in the area. Other Native Americans were taken as slaves, so the villages were essentially abandoned. Before the Europeans arrived, the native populations in this area around Massachusetts and Rhode Island numbered between 50 to 100,000 people in around 69 villages. As a comparison, the population of Castro Valley right now is about 63,000 people. The first Thanksgiving that we think of took place in 1621. The Pilgrims were celebrating their first successful harvest that fall, but we don't have any proof that the Pilgrims were necessarily best friends with the native Wampanoag tribe, or that the Pilgrims invited the Wampanoag tribe to their feast. Rather, the Pilgrims were celebrating with eating and drinking, sporting events, and making a ruckus, shooting off their muskets to celebrate a good harvest. The Wampanoag chief and his warriors showed up to see what was going on. And perhaps the Pilgrims, being outnumbered by the Wampanoag, felt they needed to share some of their food. Did the Pilgrims really teach the Native Americans about Thanksgiving? No, of course not. For thousands of years, Native Americans had been celebrating the end of the harvest season in late fall before winter came. These end-of-harvest feasts lasted many days and included food, dancing, and sharing of stories. When we think of that first Thanksgiving, we often picture the types of foods that we would eat, but it is more likely that either roast goose or duck was served at that time. Also, in 1621, sweet potatoes didn't exist yet in North America, and cranberry sauce would not have been used since sugar was very expensive and hard to come by at that time. So what food was likely served at this first Thanksgiving? It likely would have been Indian corn, venison, which is a fancy word for deer meat, perhaps duck, goose, squash, which is like pumpkin, and succotash. We get the word succotash by mixing the Native American words for beans, corn, and squash together. And the word succotash was first used in 1643. Pilgrims didn't celebrate another Thanksgiving after 1621. So that's not when our Thanksgiving tradition as we know it began. However, in 1636, a white man was found dead in a boat in Plymouth Colony, and the local leaders blamed a local Native American tribe, the Pequot. Have you ever done that? Blamed someone for doing something even though you didn't have proof that they did anything wrong? Well, the local Pilgrims in Plymouth Colony then destroyed the Pequot village and its people. So for the next 100 years, a Thanksgiving celebration was held in honor of the destruction of the Pequot people. Our modern celebration of Thanksgiving only truly started in 1863, when President Lincoln proclaimed the fourth Thursday of every November to be set aside as the official holiday called Thanksgiving. President Lincoln did this after a major battle win at Gettysburg during the United States Civil War. President Washington did try to start a Thanksgiving celebration in 1789, but it didn't catch on for another 75 years. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the history of Thanksgiving in the United States. When we learn about history, it's always important to know who is telling the story. We need to ask questions to find out what happened and learn all sides of the story. The more we know, the better we understand why some traditions may not be celebrated by others, why our understanding of history may not be the same as someone else's based upon their experiences and those of their ancestors. If we can learn to see the world through someone else's eyes, we will have a better understanding of the world around us. I will leave you with a part from the poem Judge Softly, written in 1893 by American poet Mary Thorpe Lathrop. The poem reminds us to make sure we look at the world from not only our point of view, but from others as well. Remember to walk a mile in his moccasins, and remember the lessons of humility taught to you by your elders. We will be known forever by the tracks we leave in other people's lives, our kindnesses and generosity. Take the time to walk a mile in his moccasins. Jaguars, keep making positive contributions to your family and our community. You are Possum.
Today we have Islet Eppelman, who's going to be helping us with Friday Flag. Take it away, Islet.
Please rise. Take your hats and hoods off. Place your right hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
As a Jensen Jaguar, I pledge to P. Give my personal best. A. Act responsibly. W. We show respect. S. Put safety first. Together we make Jensen Ranch positive.
Go make it a positive day.